At 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday night in September, security guard Kate Morrison was making her routine patrol through the empty corridors of St. Mary's Medical Center when she noticed something that would expose one of the largest medical data breaches in the hospital's history. What started as a simple security check would unravel a conspiracy that put thousands of patients' lives and privacy at risk, forever changing how Kate viewed the people she thought she could trust. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Kate's footsteps echoed through the silent hallways. She had no idea that within the next hour, she would stumble upon a secret that would test her courage, challenge her loyalty, and force her to make a choice that could either save thousands of patients or destroy her career forever. This is the true story of how one observant security guard's dedication to her job led to the exposure of a medical data trafficking ring operating right under everyone's nose, and how her brave decision to act would ultimately save countless lives while putting her own in danger. Kate Morrison adjusted her security badge as she began her midnight rounds at St. Paul, Mary's Medical Center. The hospital felt different at night. Transformed from the bustling hub of activity it was during the day into something quieter, almost sacred. The only sounds were the distant hum of medical equipment and the soft shuffling of nurses making their rounds on the upper floors. At 34 years old, Kate had been working security at St. Mary's for nearly 6 years. She took pride in her work, understanding that her vigilance helped protect not just the building and equipment, but also the patients who trusted this place with their lives. Her colleagues often joked that she was too thorough, too careful, but Kate believed that attention to detail separated good security guards from great ones. The hospital's layout had become as familiar to her as her own apartment. She knew which doors squeaked, which hallways echoed more than others, and which areas needed extra attention during night shifts. Her routine was methodical but never mechanical. Kate understood that routine breeds complacency, and complacency in security work could be dangerous. Tonight felt no different than any other as she made her way through the administrative wing. This section of the hospital housed offices for billing, human resources, medical records, and various administrative departments. During the day, these hallways buzzed with activity as staff members hurried between meetings and managed the complex business side of healthcare. At night, however, this area was supposed to be completely empty except for the occasional cleaning crew. Kate checked her watch as she approached the medical records department. It was 2:47 a.m., right on schedule. She had developed a habit of noting exact times during her rounds, a practice that had proven useful on more than one occasion when incident reports needed to be filed. As she turned the corner toward the medical records office, she noticed something that made her pause. There was a thin line of light visible beneath the door to Dr. Richard Hendricks' office. Dr. Hendricks served as the hospital's chief information officer, responsible for managing all electronic health records and ensuring patient data security. His office was located within the medical records department, and Kate knew from previous conversations that he typically left the hospital by 6 p.m. each evening. Kate's first instinct was that perhaps the cleaning crew was working in the office, though it seemed unusual for them to be in that particular area at this time of night. She approached the door quietly, listening for sounds of movement inside. What she heard instead sent a chill down her spine. Through the door, she could hear the distinct sound of computer keyboards being used rapidly, accompanied by hushed voices. It was clear that multiple people were inside the office, and they were definitely not cleaning staff. Kate pressed her ear closer to the door, trying to determine how many people were inside and what they might be doing. The conversation was difficult to make out clearly, but she caught fragments that immediately raised red flags. She heard someone mention patient files, download complete, and next batch ready. These phrases, combined with the unauthorized presence in Dr. Hendricks' office at nearly 3 a.m., suggested something far more serious than a late-night work session. Kate's training kicked in as she carefully backed away from the door. She knew that confronting unknown individuals alone could be dangerous, especially if they were engaged in criminal activity. Her priority was to gather information and call for backup, rather than risk a confrontation that could escalate dangerously. She moved to a position where she could observe the office door from a safe distance while remaining hidden behind a corner. Her heart was racing, but her mind was focused. Years of security work had taught her to stay calm under pressure and think strategically rather than react emotionally. After positioning herself where she could maintain surveillance, Kate quietly radioed her supervisor, Mike Chen, who was stationed at the main security desk. She kept her voice barely above a whisper, knowing that sound could carry in the empty hallways. "Mike, this is Kate. I need you to come to the medical records department immediately. We have an unauthorized presence in Dr. Hendricks' office. Multiple individuals possibly engaged in suspicious activity. I'm maintaining visual on the location, but need backup before proceeding." Mike's response came through her radio within seconds. Copy that, Kate. Stay in position and do not engage. I'm calling hospital administration and heading your way now. Estimated arrival in 3 minutes. Kate acknowledged the message and settled in to continue her observation. She made mental notes of everything she could observe, the time, the sounds coming from the office, and any other details that might be important for the subsequent investigation. As she waited, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. If individuals were accessing patient records without authorization, especially at this time of night, it suggested something far more serious than a simple case of after-hours work. Medical records contain some of the most sensitive and valuable personal information imaginable. In the wrong hands, this data could be used for identity theft, insurance fraud, or sold to organizations with malicious intent. The sound of rapid typing continued from within the office, occasionally punctuated by quiet conversation. Kate strained to hear more details, but the voices remained frustratingly indistinct. She could tell that at least 2 people were inside, possibly 3, but identifying them or understanding their specific activities was impossible from her current position. 3 minutes felt like 30, as Kate waited for Mike's arrival. When she finally saw him approaching, moving carefully and quietly down the hallway, she felt a wave of relief. Mike was an experienced security professional with over 15 years in the field, and his calm presence immediately made the situation feel more manageable. Mike reached Kate's position and she quickly briefed him on what she had observed. Together, they discussed their options. The safest approach would be to wait for hospital administration and possibly law enforcement to arrive before taking any action. However, they also recognized that waiting too long could allow the unauthorized individuals to complete whatever they were doing and potentially escape. As they debated their next move, the sound of activity from within the office suddenly changed. The typing stopped, and they could hear movement that suggested the individuals inside were preparing to leave. Kate and Mike exchanged glances, realizing that they might need to act more quickly than anticipated. "We need to see who comes out of that office," Mike whispered. "If they're stealing patient data, we can't let them walk away with it." Kate nodded in agreement. They positioned themselves to have a clear view of the office door while remaining concealed. The plan was to observe and identify the individuals as they exited, then follow them at a safe distance to see where they went and what they might be carrying. The wait was tense and silent. Both security guards knew that the next few minutes could be crucial in determining whether they were dealing with a serious security breach or simply a misunderstanding. The silence from within the office was almost more unsettling than the previous sounds of activity. Finally, they heard the unmistakable sound of the office door being opened from the inside. Kate held her breath as she prepared to see who would emerge from Dr. Hendricks' office at nearly 3 a.m. on a Tuesday night. The first person to exit was someone Kate recognized immediately, and the shock of recognition hit her like a physical blow. It was Dr. Hendricks himself, carrying a laptop bag and what appeared to be several external hard drives. Behind him came 2 other individuals whom Kate didn't recognize, but who were clearly not hospital employees based on their casual clothing and the equipment they were carrying. The realization that Dr. Hendricks, the person responsible for protecting patient data, appeared to be involved in whatever unauthorized activity was taking place in his office, completely changed the nature of the situation. This was no longer a case of unknown intruders accessing sensitive information. This appeared to be an inside job, involving someone with legitimate access to the hospital's most sensitive data systems. Kate felt a mixture of shock, anger, and fear as she watched the 3 individuals move quietly down the hallway. Dr. Hendricks locked his office door behind them, and the group began walking towards a side exit that Kate knew led to the staff parking garage. Mike immediately radioed for additional security personnel and notified hospital administration of this development. The fact that Dr. Hendricks was involved elevated this from a security incident to a potential criminal investigation that would require immediate attention from hospital leadership and likely law enforcement. As the 3 individuals disappeared around the corner heading toward the exit, Kate realized that her routine midnight security check had uncovered what could be one of the most serious breaches of patient trust in the hospital's history. The implications were staggering. Dr. Hendricks had access to thousands of patient records, and if he was indeed stealing or selling this information, the damage could affect countless lives. The night that had started as just another routine shift had transformed into something that would challenge everything Kate thought she knew about the people she worked with and the institution she had sworn to protect. The following morning brought a whirlwind of activity that Kate had never experienced in her 6 years at St. Jack Mary's Medical Center. Hospital administrators, IT security specialists, and federal investigators filled the conference room where Kate found herself recounting the events of the previous night for what felt like the 100th time. Detective Sarah Williams from the Cybercrime Division leaned forward as Kate finished describing what she had witnessed. Ms. Morrison, I want to make sure we have this absolutely correct. You're certain that Dr. Hendricks was carrying external storage devices when he left his office? Kate nodded firmly. Yes, definitely. He had a laptop bag and what looked like 2 or 3 external hard drives. The other 2 men with him were also carrying equipment, though I couldn't identify exactly what from my position. Hospital CEO Margaret Foster sat at the head of the conference table, her face grave with concern. The implications of what Kate had discovered were becoming clearer with each piece of information that emerged from the investigation. If Dr. Hendricks had been stealing patient data, the hospital faced not only criminal charges but also massive civil liability and damage to its reputation that could take decades to repair. The IT security team had been working since early morning to determine the scope of the breach. Their preliminary findings were alarming. Access logs showed that Dr. Hendricks had been downloading large volumes of patient data during late-night sessions over the past several months. The data included medical histories, social security numbers, insurance information, and other highly sensitive personal details for thousands of patients. We're looking at potentially 40,000 compromised patient records, explained Chief Technology Officer Lisa Park. The downloads were sophisticated and selective, targeting specific types of high-value medical information that would be most useful for identity theft and insurance fraud. Kate felt sick as the magnitude of the situation became clear. 40,000 patients whose most private medical information had potentially been stolen and sold. These were people who had trusted St. Mary's with their health and their personal information, never imagining that someone in a position of authority might betray that trust. Detective Williams continued her questioning. Had you noticed any unusual behavior from Dr. Hendricks in recent months? Changes in his routine, interactions with unfamiliar people, anything that might have seemed out of place? Kate thought carefully before responding. Over the past few months, she had noticed that Dr. Hendricks seemed to be working later than usual on occasion, but she had assumed he was simply dealing with increased workload. Now, those late nights took on a completely different meaning. He had been staying late more often, Kate said, but I thought he was just busy with normal work. He always seemed professional and friendly when I saw him during my rounds. There was nothing that made me suspicious until last night. The investigation team explained that Dr. Hendricks had not reported to work that morning and was not answering his phone. His home appeared to be empty, and his neighbors reported that they had seen him loading luggage into his car very early that morning. It was becoming clear that his activities the previous night might have been his final data theft before attempting to disappear. We've frozen his bank accounts and issued alerts to airports and border crossings, Detective Williams informed the group. We also have search warrants for his home and vehicle. This appears to be a well-planned operation, possibly involving organized criminal networks that specialize in medical identity theft. Kate was asked to work with a sketch artist to provide descriptions of the 2 unknown individuals who had been with Dr. Hendricks. As she worked to recall their faces and physical characteristics, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had seen one of them before, though she couldn't place where or when. The sketch artist, Maria Santos, was patient and skilled at helping Kate remember details. Think about height relative to Dr. Hendricks, Maria suggested. Was the first man taller or shorter? What about build? Thin, average, heavy? As the sketches took shape, Kate felt increasingly confident that she had provided accurate descriptions. The first man had been tall and thin, with dark hair and glasses. The second was shorter and stockier, with a beard and baseball cap. Both had been dressed casually in jeans and dark jackets, which had struck Kate as unusual since most people in the hospital during evening hours wore either medical scrubs or business attire. I keep feeling like I've seen the tall one before, Kate told Detective Williams. Maybe not here at the hospital, but somewhere. It's bothering me that I can't remember where. That's normal, the detective assured her. Sometimes memories surface when we're not actively trying to force them. If you do remember where you might have seen him, contact me immediately. As the day progressed, more disturbing details emerged from the investigation. The FBI's cybercrime unit had been monitoring dark web marketplaces where stolen medical data was sold, and they believed they had identified sales that matched the timing and characteristics of data that could have been stolen from St. Mary's. Special Agent Robert Hayes from the FBI explained the broader context. Medical identity theft is a growing criminal enterprise. Stolen health records can sell for $50 to $100 each on illegal markets. Complete medical profiles with insurance information can bring even more. We're dealing with millions of dollars in stolen data. Kate realized that her decision to investigate the unusual activity in Dr. Hendricks' office, rather than simply noting it and moving on, had potentially prevented an even larger theft. If she had ignored the light under his door or assumed it was authorized activity, Dr. Hendricks might have continued his operations for months or years longer. The hospital began the painful process of notifying affected patients about the potential breach of their medical information. Legal teams were preparing for the lawsuits that would inevitably follow, and public relations specialists were working to manage the media attention that such a story would generate. Kate found herself at the center of what was becoming a national news story. As word of the breach leaked to the media, reporters began calling the hospital asking for interviews with the security guard who uncovered the medical data theft ring. Hospital administrators advised Kate to refer all media inquiries to the hospital's communications department. The investigation also revealed that Dr. Hendricks had significant gambling debts and had been under financial pressure for several months. This provided a possible motive for his involvement in the data theft operation. Financial investigators found evidence of large cash deposits in accounts controlled by Dr. C. Hendricks' deposits that coincided with the dates when patient data had been downloaded. It appears he was being paid approximately $5,000 per download session, Agent Hayes explained. Given the volume of data he was stealing, he could have made several $100,000 over the past year. As the scope of the criminal operation became clearer, Kate began to understand just how significant her midnight discovery had been. This wasn't simply a case of one rogue employee stealing data. Dr. Hendricks appeared to be part of a larger network of medical professionals who were being recruited or coerced into participating in organized data theft operations. We've identified similar patterns at 3 other hospitals in the region, Agent Hayes revealed. It's possible that the same criminal organization that was working with Dr. Hendricks has infiltrated other medical facilities. Your discovery may have helped us identify a much larger conspiracy. The investigation team asked Kate to review security footage from previous weeks to see if she could identify the 2 unknown individuals in any earlier recordings. Spending hours watching grainy surveillance video was tedious work, but Kate understood its importance. After several hours of reviewing footage, Kate made another significant discovery. The tall man with dark hair appeared in recordings from 2 weeks earlier, entering the hospital through a service entrance during evening hours when visitor access was restricted. In the footage, he was clearly meeting with Dr. Hendricks, and they appeared to be having an animated discussion. This proves the relationship between Dr. Philip Senso. Hendricks and these individuals goes back at least 2 weeks, Detective Williams noted. It supports our theory that this was a planned, ongoing operation rather than a spontaneous crime. As the second day of investigation concluded, Kate felt emotionally drained, but also proud of the role she had played in uncovering the conspiracy. Her commitment to thorough security practices had potentially saved thousands of patients from having their medical information exploited by criminals. However, she also felt angry and betrayed. Dr. Hendricks had been someone she respected and trusted. He had always been friendly during their interactions, and she had considered him one of the good people working to help patients and protect their interests. The revelation that he had been systematically stealing patient data for months challenged her faith in the people around her. The hospital announced that it would be implementing additional security measures, including enhanced monitoring of data access, mandatory 2-person authorization for large data downloads, and increased overnight security presence in sensitive areas. Kate's vigilance had not only caught a criminal, but it also led to improvements that would better protect patients in the future. As she prepared to go home after her extended shift, Kate received a call from Detective Williams. The FBI had arrested Dr. Hendricks at a hotel near the Canadian border, where he was apparently preparing to flee the country. In his possession were multiple external hard drives containing stolen patient data from not just St. Mary's, but from 2 other hospitals as well. The investigation was far from over, but Kate's midnight discovery had set in motion events that would ultimately expose a multi-million-dollar medical identity theft ring and protect countless patients from having their most private information exploited by criminals. 3 weeks after her midnight discovery, Kate found herself sitting in a federal courthouse, preparing to testify before a grand jury, investigating what prosecutors were now calling one of the largest medical data theft conspiracies in U.S. history. The case had expanded far beyond Dr. Detmer, Hendricks and St. Mary's Medical Center, revealing a sophisticated criminal network that had infiltrated healthcare systems across multiple states. Detective Williams met Kate outside the courthouse steps to brief her on the latest developments. The investigation had taken several surprising turns since Dr. Hendricks' arrest, and the scope of the conspiracy had grown beyond what anyone had initially imagined. "We've now identified 12 different medical facilities that were compromised," Detective Williams explained as they walked toward the courthouse entrance. The criminal organization was using a combination of financial incentives and blackmail to recruit inside accomplices at hospitals, clinics, and insurance companies. The FBI had discovered that Dr. Hendricks was not a willing participant in the scheme, at least not initially. The criminal organization had approached him after learning about his gambling debts and financial difficulties. When he initially refused to participate, they had threatened to expose other illegal activities and destroy his career and family. Faced with these pressures, he had agreed to begin stealing patient data. "It's a pattern we've seen repeated at other facilities," Detective Williams continued. "The criminals identify healthcare workers who are vulnerable due to financial problems, personal issues, or compromising situations. They use a combination of money and threats to force cooperation." Kate learned that the two men she had seen with Dr. Hendricks that night were key figures in the criminal organization. The tall man with dark hair was Marcus Chen, a former IT specialist who had been recruiting medical professionals for data theft operations. The shorter man with the beard was Victor Petrov, who managed the technical aspects of extracting and selling the stolen information. Both men had been arrested in coordinated raids conducted by federal agents across 3 states. In their possession, investigators found sophisticated hacking equipment, encrypted communication devices, and detailed records of their criminal operations. The evidence painted a picture of a highly organized enterprise that treated stolen medical data as a commodity to be harvested and sold. As Kate entered the courthouse, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed since that midnight security check. Media attention had been intense, with news organizations describing her as a hero who had exposed a major threat to medical privacy. While she appreciated the recognition, Kate remained focused on ensuring that justice was served and that the patients whose data had been stolen would receive appropriate protections and compensation. The jury room was filled with serious-faced citizens who would decide whether the evidence warranted criminal charges against the various defendants. Kate had been warned that her testimony would be crucial in establishing the timeline of events and confirming the identities of the individuals involved. Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Morrison led Kate through her testimony with careful attention to detail. Every aspect of that night needed to be documented precisely, from the time she first noticed the light under Dr. Express, Hendricks's door, to her observations of the 3 men leaving the building. "Ms. Morrison," the prosecutor began, "please tell the grand jury what first alerted you to unusual activity in the Medical Records Department on the night of September 15th. Kate recounted her story clearly and methodically, describing her security rounds, her discovery of unauthorized activity, and her careful observation of the individuals involved. The grand jurors listened intently, occasionally taking notes as she spoke. When asked to identify the individuals she had seen that night, Kate pointed to photographs that had been prepared by the prosecution. "That's Dr. Hendricks," she said, indicating the first photo. "And those are the 2 men who were with him," she continued, pointing to photos of Marcus Chen and Victor Petrov. The prosecutor then introduced evidence that had been gathered during the investigation. Computer forensics had revealed that Dr. Philide shamed Hendricks had downloaded patient records for over 47,000 individuals over a period of 8 months. The stolen data included not just basic demographic information, but also detailed medical histories, prescription records, and insurance details that could be used for comprehensive identity theft. The defendant Hendricks was being paid $5,000 for each data extraction session, the prosecutor explained to the grand jury. Financial records show that he received over $150,000 during his participation in this conspiracy. Kate learned during the proceedings that the criminal organization had been selling the stolen medical data to multiple buyers, including identity thieves, insurance fraudsters, and even foreign entities interested in gathering intelligence about American healthcare systems. The total value of the stolen information was estimated to exceed $20 million. The investigation had also revealed that Marcus Chen and Victor Petrov were part of a larger international criminal syndicate with connections to organized crime groups in Eastern Europe. They had been operating similar medical data theft schemes in Canada and Mexico, making this a truly international conspiracy. As Kate's testimony concluded, she felt a sense of relief that her part in the legal proceedings was complete. However, she also understood that the impact of her discovery would continue to unfold for months or years to come. The criminal trials would require additional testimony, and the civil lawsuits filed by affected patients would likely continue for years. After leaving the courthouse, Kate met with hospital administrators to discuss the ongoing security improvements at St. Mary's. The data breach had prompted a complete overhaul of the hospital's information security protocols, and Kate's insights as a security professional were valuable in designing better protection systems. "Your attention to detail that night saved us from an even worse situation," CEO Margaret Foster told Kate during their meeting. "If Dr. Hendricks had continued his activities for several more months as planned, we could have been looking at over 100,000 compromised patient records." The hospital had invested over $2 million in new security systems, including advanced monitoring software that would flag unusual data access patterns and require additional authorization for large downloads. Kate had been promoted to security supervisor and given responsibility for training other security personnel on recognizing signs of potential data theft. During her expanded role, Kate developed training programs that emphasized the importance of investigating any unusual activity, no matter how minor it might seem. Her midnight discovery had proven that even experienced criminals could be caught through careful observation and attention to detail. The case had also attracted attention from healthcare security professionals nationwide. Kate was invited to speak at conferences about medical data protection and had become a recognized expert on hospital security practices. Her experience demonstrated that human vigilance remained an essential component of cybersecurity even in an age of sophisticated technological protections. 3 months after the grand jury proceedings, Kate received word that all 3 main defendants had been indicted on federal charges, including conspiracy to commit wire fraud, computer crimes, and violation of healthcare privacy laws. The charges carried potential sentences of 15 to 20 years in federal prison. The case had also prompted congressional hearings on medical data security and led to proposed legislation that would strengthen penalties for healthcare data theft and require additional security measures at medical facilities. Kate was invited to testify before a House subcommittee about her experience and to provide recommendations for improving hospital security practices. As she prepared for her congressional testimony, Kate reflected on how her commitment to doing her job thoroughly had resulted in protecting thousands of patients and contributing to improved medical data security nationwide. Her midnight discovery had proven that individual vigilance and integrity could make a significant difference in protecting people's most private information. The criminal organization's activities had also been linked to several high-profile cases of medical identity theft that had puzzled law enforcement for months. Victims who had been unable to understand how their medical information had been compromised finally had answers, and many expressed gratitude to Kate for her role in exposing the conspiracy. However, Kate remained focused on the broader implications of the case. The investigation had revealed vulnerabilities in medical data security that extended far beyond St. Mary's Medical Center. Healthcare facilities across the country were now implementing enhanced security measures based on lessons learned from the conspiracy that Kate had uncovered. The support she received from colleagues, patients, and healthcare security professionals reinforced Kate's belief that her decision to investigate that unusual light under Dr. Hendricks' door had been absolutely the right choice. Her vigilance had protected countless patients and helped strengthen medical data security nationwide. 6 months after that pivotal midnight security check, Kate Morrison stood before a packed federal courthouse as verdicts were read in the largest medical data theft case in American history. The trial had drawn national attention, with patients, healthcare professionals, and cybersecurity experts following every development. Kate's testimony had been central to the prosecution's case, and now she would finally see justice served for the thousands of victims whose privacy had been violated. Judge Michael Chen addressed the courtroom as the defendants stood to hear their sentences. Dr. Richard Hendricks, who had ultimately cooperated with investigators and testified against his co-conspirators, received a sentence of 8 years in federal prison. His cooperation had been valuable in understanding how the criminal organization operated and in identifying other potential victims. But the judge made clear that his betrayal of patient trust warranted significant punishment. Marcus Chen, the recruiter who had pressured Dr. Hendricks and other medical professionals into joining the conspiracy, was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. His role in organizing and managing the criminal network made him responsible for the entire scope of the operation's damage. Viktor Petrov, the technical specialist who had developed the methods for extracting and selling stolen medical data, received a 20-year sentence. The judge noted that his sophisticated understanding of healthcare data systems had enabled the conspiracy to operate on such a large scale and cause such extensive harm. As the sentences were announced, Kate felt a deep sense of satisfaction that justice was being served. The criminals who had violated the trust of thousands of patients would face significant consequences for their actions. However, she also understood that the real measure of success would be whether the healthcare industry learned from this case and implemented better protections for patient data. The investigation had ultimately identified over 80,000 patients whose medical information had been compromised across 12 different healthcare facilities. The stolen data had been used for identity theft, insurance fraud, and other criminal purposes, causing millions of dollars in damage and immeasurable personal harm to the victims. Following the sentencing, Kate met with representatives from patient advocacy groups who had been following the case. They thanked her for her courage in investigating the suspicious activity and for her ongoing efforts to improve medical data security. Many of the affected patients had written letters expressing their gratitude for her vigilance in protecting their privacy. Your decision to investigate that night literally changed thousands of lives, said Patricia Williams, director of the Medical Privacy Foundation. Without your attention to detail and commitment to doing your job thoroughly, this conspiracy could have continued for years and affected hundreds of thousands more patients. The case had indeed led to significant improvements in medical data security nationwide. Congress had passed the Medical Information Protection Act, which established stronger penalties for healthcare data theft and required enhanced security measures at all facilities handling patient information. The legislation was informally known as Kate's Law, in recognition of her role in exposing the vulnerabilities that the criminals had exploited. Healthcare facilities across the country had implemented new security protocols based on lessons learned from the St. Mary's case. These included enhanced monitoring of data access, mandatory dual authorization for large downloads, increased physical security in sensitive areas, and comprehensive background checks for employees with access to patient records. Kate had played an active role in developing these improved security standards. Her practical experience as a security professional combined with her first-hand knowledge of how the criminal conspiracy had operated made her insights valuable to healthcare administrators and cybersecurity experts. She had been invited to join the Healthcare Security Advisory Council, a federal panel that developed recommendations for protecting medical data. Her appointment to this prestigious position reflected recognition of her expertise and the significance of her contribution to healthcare security. The financial impact of the case had been substantial for all parties involved. The criminals were ordered to pay over $30 million in restitution to victims, though investigators doubted that much of this money could be recovered. The affected healthcare facilities faced hundreds of millions of dollars in legal settlements and regulatory fines. St. Mary's Medical Center had ultimately paid over $40 million in settlements to affected patients, regulatory penalties, and security improvements. However, CEO Margaret Foster credited Kate's discovery with preventing even greater damage that could have threatened the hospital's survival. If this conspiracy had continued undetected for another year, we could have been looking at compromised data for every patient who had ever been treated at our facility, Foster explained during a board meeting. Kate's vigilance literally saved our institution and protected our community. The case had also prompted changes in how security personnel were trained and utilized in healthcare settings. Kate had developed training programs that were now used at hospitals nationwide, teaching security professionals to recognize signs of potential data theft and other cybercrimes. Her story had become a case study in business schools and cybersecurity programs, demonstrating how human vigilance remained essential even in an age of sophisticated technological protections. Students learned that the most advanced computer security systems could still be defeated by criminals with inside access, making trained and alert security personnel a crucial line of defense. Kate had also become a sought-after speaker at healthcare conferences and cybersecurity events. Her presentations emphasized practical aspects of security that theoretical experts sometimes overlooked. She stressed the importance of trusting instincts, investigating unusual activities, and maintaining constant vigilance even during routine duties. Criminals count on security personnel to become complacent and to ignore small details that seem unimportant, Kate explained during one of her presentations.
That light under the office door could have been nothing, but investigating it thoroughly revealed a conspiracy that had been operating for months.
The personal impact of the case on Kate had been significant as well. She had received numerous awards for her service, including recognition from the Department of Health and Human Services and the FBI. However, she remained focused on her work rather than the attention it had brought her. Kate had been promoted to Director of Security at St. Mary's, with responsibility for developing security protocols for the entire healthcare network. Her annual salary had more than doubled, and she had received a substantial bonus for her role in uncovering the conspiracy. More importantly to Kate, however, was the knowledge that her vigilance had protected vulnerable patients whose trust had been placed in the healthcare system. The letters she received from patients who had been affected by the data theft reinforced her commitment to maintaining the highest standards of security and protection. One letter that particularly moved Kate came from elderly patient Helen Rodriguez, whose medical information had been stolen and used to fraudulently obtain prescription medications. "Because you caught those criminals, I learned that my identity had been stolen before they could cause even more damage," Mrs. Rodriguez wrote. "You protected me and thousands of other patients who trusted the hospital with our most private information." The case had also strengthened Kate's relationships with her colleagues at St. Mary's. Staff members who had initially been skeptical of enhanced security measures came to appreciate their importance after seeing how easily patient data could be compromised. Kate's role had evolved from security guard to trusted advisor on protecting patient welfare. Looking back on that midnight security check that had changed everything, Kate felt proud of her decision to investigate rather than simply note the unusual activity and move on. Her commitment to thorough security practices had uncovered a criminal conspiracy, protected thousands of patients, and led to improvements in medical data security nationwide. The case had proven that individual integrity and attention to detail could make a tremendous difference in protecting people's privacy and safety. Kate's midnight discovery had demonstrated that even in an age of sophisticated technology, human vigilance remained an essential component of security. As she continued her work at St. Mary's, Kate maintained the same careful attention to detail that had led to her historic discovery. Every night during her security rounds, she remembered that protecting patients required constant vigilance, and that seemingly small observations could reveal significant threats. The legacy of that September night continued to influence healthcare security practices across the country. Kate's story had become a powerful reminder that protecting patient privacy required not just advanced technology, but also dedicated professionals who understood that their vigilance could literally change lives. Years later, as Kate trained new security personnel, she always emphasized the lesson of that midnight discovery. "Trust your instincts, investigate anything unusual, and remember that you're protecting real people who have placed their trust in us," she would tell them. Your attention to detail might be the thing that protects thousands of patients from having their most private information exploited by criminals. Kate Morrison's midnight security check had evolved into a legacy of improved patient protection that would benefit healthcare consumers for generations to come. Her dedication to doing her job thoroughly had proven that individual integrity could make a difference on a national scale.